All right. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States to the republic.
All right, roll call. All members of council are present with the exceptions of Councilor Haugen and Councilor Lisowski, who are excused. Oh, Councilor Lisowski's online somewhere.
He's green.
Oh, there he is. All right. Councilor Lisowski is meeting with us online. Welcome, Councilor Lisowski. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Hearing a motion from Councilor Polling. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to comment on anything not on tonight's agenda?
Hi, this is Sarah Wad Elrod. I have a comment.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Wad. I'm Neil Hoffman's aunt and a board member of the nonprofit Run with Neil. I just wanted to start out by saying thank you for listening to our public comment at the last meeting and voting to make Run with Neil a part of the Scappoose Summer Festival. As requested last meeting, both our group and Treadway Events have investigated available dates in September, looking for the most open date that would assure success. We both independently have come up with Saturday, September 10th as that date. Our group was told by our race timing company that September 10th was the only open date in the entire fall period. They further urged us to commit to this date ASAP so they could slot us in their schedule. At this point, we must commit to this date in order to secure a timing company for the run. We do understand that Treadway has yet to present their final proposal to the city council. In the unlikely case that the city decides to not go forward with Treadway or the festival in general, as stated previously, we are prepared to take their own on independently. We asked the council to agree that if the city does decide to go forward with the September festival, that it does so with the date of September 10th, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
But regarding your comment, how do we facilitate that? Is there something we need to do?
Cool.
So we can nail down September 7th. Is there something we need to do? Some action we need to take?
My recommendation to her would be to nail down that date, to do a run either way. And then, because if you can't get a timer, take it.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason the event doesn't go forward, I think that we as a city would support that run anyways, because it's for a good cause and runs are good actual tourist events.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly say that, that the city will reserve that date, not have any, unless it's the city festival, not try and compete in any manner with that. And, final decision hasn't been made as far as whether you're going to have an event. But that doesn't, even if the Run for Neil is a standalone, that could be a standalone event that the city supports in a variety of manners.
Yeah, my recommendation was to take the date.
That's fair.
Counselor.
So is there anything needed from us for you to be able to secure that date, or do we need to do it? Do you do it? What exactly is the procedure for this?
Paul can do it on his end. So
Thank you.
I don't think we need anything.
I think it's just more the question is, I don't think that we're going to get information back from Treadway in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm saying Okay, let's make sure we have that run, because that was a great run. I barely made it. I did.
Yeah, nail it.
Take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I will move forward to the consent agenda. December 6, 2021 City Council Work Session Minutes, December 6, 2021 City Council Meeting Minutes, and December 13, 2021 City Council Meeting Minutes. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I have a question. Counselor Haugen had written some, for those changed before it came to us. Really, thank you. To approve.
Hearing a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second. Made by Council President Bryson, seconded by Councilor Polling. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business, RFP 2021-04, 50-year plan contract. How are you? That's wonderful.
All right, Mayor and councilors, first of all, Happy New Year and thank you for your service to the city. So I am here tonight to seek council approval to enter into a contract with the high scorer for the 50-year plan project proposal. City Council established Goal 2D to develop a long-term comprehensive community vision, a 50-year plan as part of the fiscal year 21-22 council goals. Staff held a pre-project work session with council in October 5th of 2020. And that was just so that city staff could kind of get an idea of what council was looking for and how staff should address the goal. Feedback from that initial work session was incorporated into a draft scope of work. And then once that draft scope was prepared, staff held a second council work session, February 16th of 2021, in order to make sure that that scope of work was something council supported. And then those, the feedback that we gathered was included in the RFP scope of work that we did release. So on November 3rd, last fall, staff held a pre-proposal meeting with interested firms. We did have 9 firms participate. From that, we did receive 2 proposals, one from Herbsworks and one from Echo Northwest. The 5-member review committee scored each of the proposals. Echo Northwest had a total score of 186, and Herbsworks had a total score of 111. In evaluating the proposals, price was a minimal factor, but it was considered. More importantly, the city wanted to make sure that the consultants could include all the components of the scope of work, and that the proposal demonstrated that the consultants had the qualifications and experience to complete the project successfully. The reason why Herbsworks proposal was scored significantly lower is because they did not include an economic opportunities analysis in their proposal. They also did not include the infrastructure report that was needed to evaluate like a cost benefit analysis of lands that the city would consider for inclusion in urban reserves. So together those 2 components that were missing would have a cost of around $60,000 or more. And then the Echo Northwest proposal included all of the items identified in the scope of work with the exception of 2 items. That was the tree canopy study and the report on future technology in planning. So these 2 items were omitted by Echo Northwest, admittedly, because they wanted more feedback from council before they put scope and budget to those items. And we felt that that was okay as staff, and it was an acceptable approach. The tree canopy study and technology report are not going to be, you know, higher dollar items like the economic opportunities analysis would be. Additionally, these 2 components are not going to be like the basis of what the city determines to do as far as expansion of UGB and things like that. So these things would be added in at a later date, but they did not include them in their initial scope. Again, they wanted more clarity from council first. Echo Northwest has vast experience in Oregon completing similar work for other jurisdictions. They've done a significant amount of economic opportunities analysis, housing needs analysis, buildable lands inventory, UGB expansions, establishment of urban reserves. They've worked here in Scappoose, Columbia County, Hillsborough, Hood River, Sherwood, Bend, Corvallis. We could go on and on. And then 3J, their sub-consultant, has significant experience on kind of the other side of things with visioning, community outreach, also code work as far as drafting development code updates and updating comprehensive plans. So together they represent a very strong team of seasoned professionals. One of the things I shared with them during the pre-proposal meeting with the 9 consultants that came was, I know that just in feedback from when we went through the last housing needs analysis, there was a sense that it was rushed and we just had to like get through it, meet the deadlines and get it done. And so I was really clear that that's not a process that we're interested in, that we wanted to take time to get through this and have ample check-ins along the way. I do feel that Echo Northwest really heard us. They did respond by including 5 open houses and public events in their proposal. They have 11 decision maker work sessions, and that would be with City Council and Planning Commission at key points in the process to get your feedback to see, you know, if there's things that need to be addressed that initially weren't addressed. And then 14 stakeholder advisory meetings, and that's over the course of the whole project. So lots and lots of check-ins along the way. The total cost of Echo Northwest proposal came in at $278,954. Again, that would cover 3 fiscal years. So one thing I'd like to mention is that while the scope of work was vetted by council early on, and we did incorporate council's feedback, we knew that given the complexity of this project, there could be things that came up along the way that hadn't been anticipated. And that's fine. And that there will be multiple check-ins with the consultant throughout each fiscal year, checking on timeline, checking on scope, and that we can add scope for additional items when we need to, and then budget for those prior to that budget fiscal year budgeting process to make sure that we're accounting for that. So we knew there needed to be flexibility for this. That was always part of it in my mind. So the other thing too is that the contract is for time and materials with a not to exceed of the 278,954. So for instance, you know, if we get the EOA study back and the HNA and we're looking at this and there's not a justification based on population projection, et cetera, for establishing urban reserves or for taking on some of these components that we did include, that money doesn't have to get spent then for that process, right? So then that money would either then transition into added scope of work items, or we just come in under budget. Now, likewise, if we don't remove anything and we add things, it could come in over this. Bottom line is, because we have 3 fiscal years in which to account for the costs, we can make sure that council's, you know, needs are being addressed and that we're responding to the community and making sure that we're covering everything. The other thing, I guess, just to note is that there are very few firms that have the capacity to do this work right now. We saw that there were 9 firms interested, only 2 actually submitted proposals. And that's because there is a lot of money coming from the legislature, you know, through DLCD to fund a lot of this type of work right now. Those firms are absolutely at capacity. So I feel very confident in Echo Northwest's ability to do this work based on the submittal that we did receive. Again, the fiscal impact would total 278,954 through fiscal year 23-24. The city has budgeted 100,000 in this fiscal year's budget, and then the remaining amount would be budgeted for in upcoming fiscal years. Staff and the review committee recommend that the city proceed with contracting with Echo Northwest for RFP 2021-04, the 50-year plan at a not to exceed cost of 278,954. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Polling. Mine's more of a comment than a question. I definitely like the idea of having, with Echo Northwest, since we've worked with them too, we kind of already built a little bit of a relationship, but also the more interaction that we can have with them, having those open houses, the work sessions throughout the process to kind of guide in a certain direction. Having the key people involved in those would be, that's worth more than anything else. Councilor Miller.
Lori, can I just clarify on page, for me, it's 151 under physical impact. It says the city budgeted $100,000 in FY 2021 through 2022. I just want to make sure that, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I just want to make sure that it's 3 physical years it's budgeted through, because this says fiscal year 2023 through 2024. So should that be July 2022 through July 2023 and then July 2023 through June 2024? It's three physical, I guess. I just want to confirm it's 3 physical years.
Yeah, so I mean, it's 3 fiscal years, 3 physical years. They're just split, on different months. So it's not January 1 through December. And again, there's going to be flexibility in when this actually wraps up, depending on kind of if we end up with findings that say we're justified, we can go forward with the UGB expansion, establishment of urban reserves. It could extend out beyond this. Again, that's a conversation we'll have once we get those studies back to see what it looks like.
Okay, so we're currently in our fiscal year 2021 through 2022, correct? And then we have fiscal year July 2022 through June 2023.
Right.
And then we have fiscal year July 2023 through June 2024. So it's coming out of all 3 of those physical.
Yeah, it's coming out of all 3.
Thanks.
Yes.
So on the Canopy one wasn't my bailiwick area when we were talking about this. I think I was more the technology, what the
Like
future.
Brandon maybe had say in the Canopy.
Yeah.
Yes, Brandon suggested the Canopy cover a topic. And the other thing too is I know in the past there was
You talking to the microphone?
Katie she was with one of the state divisions, and she had asked us about doing a tree canopy study in the past. I reached out to her today too, just to see. I don't know if she said she had funding for that or grant money for that. Yeah, it's been since 2018. So that's something to look at too. Is there any other funding for that? But we definitely want to look at that, because one of the things that we had said to the consultants is that we do want to look at this kind of with a lens, like an ecological framework lens, and see like what does climate change look like in the future. And so they are aware of that and could pull in additional staff to look at the tree canopy study. It's not to say it's not going to be included. It will get done as part of this. It's just a matter of getting really clear on sort of also, depending on what information we get back from the tree canopy study, what do we want it to change? Like, are we going to update our comp plan or our development code? And what changes, how far reaching will that be as far as the work that they're doing on it?
And then the technology, the future technology.
Yes.
I saw Councilor Haugen had sent an email about a futurist, and he's kind of on somewhat of the right track there, because we want to know. I'm thinking right now, I'm sitting there going, what did the community and the technology that this community had looked like 50 years ago, and what changes were made because of technology since then.
Mhm.
And what's going to happen in the future. I mean, we got a lot of things that are potentially happening in the future, from
Right.
a lot more robotics to, potentially driverless cars to how does that impact? One of the things driving Uber, the first impacts I noticed with the change that people didn't really foresee with the transportation with that was, instead of needing as many parking spots, you needed places to pick up and drop off people.
Right.
And in fact, in places with bad parking, Northwest Portland is a really good example. Businesses actually did better because Uber and Lyft were there, because customers had a way to get there without having to find parking. So these are just kind of, when I think about what's it going to look like in the future, I'm thinking about it in, we're going to have these land use and policy rules, but what are they going to look like in the future? I mean, are we going to, we're going to set something down for today, but is it any good for the future?
Right. And we don't, just like 50 years ago, people couldn't anticipate what was coming, right? We don't know what's going to be here in 50 years either. And this would be, your comp plan's a living document. You're going to update it more often than every 50 years. So this will be revisited over the years. But that's good feedback.
Part of it is,
and
yes.
I want to make sure that council has an opportunity to say, these are the things we want this report to address.
When I'm
Make
thinking of
sure.
50-year vision, I'm thinking of what's the community going to look like? And I
Yeah.
think this is what Mr. Kelsey, Councilor Kelsey was
Mhm.
saying at the time, is what is the community going to look like in 50 years?
Right.
I'm probably not going to be here. Pete probably will still be here.
Yeah, I should be here.
Or you'll be like, but but what's the
Indeed.
community going to look like? And it's good for the government to be able to have that
Yes.
vision of the community. So
I appreciate all the work on this. It really does look good to me. These other 50 or 20 cities, have any of them done a 50-year plan?
To my knowledge, and Peter, yeah, go ahead.
So this is, the urban reserves process is something that dates from 2007. The original ones were in the metro area, so that both urban and rural reserves, so people would know for future urbanization this would happen, and then for 50 years these agricultural areas would be farmed. So that litigation finally settled last year, so it was a 12-year process. But now the idea is to kind of to signal to people where we would expect future growth, so that hopefully speculative land value will be taken out, so that developers won't be saying, well, I think they might go here, so I'm going to buy this land and just sit on it, to provide more of a roadmap to people. So, and that will help guide some of your transportation and other decisions too. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of a evolving tool.
Is Portland the only city or metro, the only area that's established a 50-year plan though?
Yeah, so Metro has the urban and rural reserves process, so that we know what areas will be brought into the UGB, if any. And then, again, in 2007, it was purely for Metro, this tool. And then I think cities have said, well, we might like to use that as well. But I'm not aware of any that have actually been through the entire process. The other benefit that people pointed to is that if people anticipate their land will be urbanized and it's like an RRFF5, which means like a 5-acre minimum, and they have 25 acres, that maybe instead of doing 5 lots, they'll keep it together as one, knowing that it will, then it's more efficient to develop. So that's kind of the other thing that's been pointed to as a benefit. Having been extensively been through an urban and rural reserves process and part of the litigation, that it'll be a smaller component of our planning than some of the other elements. But again, it will provide members of the community to kind of say, what should this roadmap look like for future growth? So I think that and I think the UGB swap concept that we have as part of this will, in the near term, probably be more robust than the 50-year portion.
So apparently we don't have a document we could look at as to what ours will look like for a comparable size city, so we.
Oh, yeah, no, because
We'll-
cities
we'll
our
be like
size
the-
don't do this.
be
and
like
and I
the-
applaud
the
you for your
trailblazers.
future, your ability to look to the future and to plan because cities our size just don't.
Even large cities, we're really on the cutting edge of some of these land use tools. Because a city like Portland doesn't have room to expand. Like the city of Portland has no urban reserves. And then suburban cities just haven't done this yet.
We'll be,
Check us out.
so we'll be leading the way on this for
This-
comparable size cities.
This will be a
in your plan.
notable project
I'm not sure.
likely, yeah.
If that's good or not, I mean, I really don't know. And, but, I think it'd be a good idea for us to be able to take a look at this proposal, these two proposals, mostly the one. I agree, you picked the right one. But just to see what's on there, because we're voting on approving a pretty good chunk of money. And even, they're probably very lengthy, and we don't have to have paper documents of them. But if we could look at, a digital version of what the proposals are, I think would help us make a better decision. And I think at least I would, and Joel's suggestion is to take a look at these proposals before we vote on them. And I would think that's a good idea.
I can appreciate that. And I did check with staff, and to my knowledge, that's never been done by council. I don't know why, but what I do know is that there is a very particular scoring rubric that we established in the RFP. And so we scored according to that. So while it would provide information to you about what was, how they, responded to the RFP, I don't think it would change scoring per se because that step has been done. Peter, if you have anything to add or.
This was not a particularly close, I mean,
Proposal.
there was one group that provided the elements that we had requested, and there was another group that did not. And there's one team that has significant experience in this area, and there's another team that has less experience in the area and has done more urban redevelopment than UGB expansion. I have worked with all the groups. I was part of the urban reserve process for 12 years, involved in the litigation, and then our UGB, Lori paid me a nice compliment because we got confirmation from the Oregon Supreme Court that our UGB expansion got done last week after 5 years. So,
Perfect.
yeah, so I'm really comfortable with both Eco Northwest and 3J. We built this RFP together, Lori and I, with a lot of help from Isaac as well. And we were really diligent about making sure that we identified all the elements that you as council said you prioritized, because again, we're kind of on the cutting edge. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a thorough understanding of what you wanted, which is why we held the 2 work sessions. And then that they had a thorough understanding of our expectations. And I think that there's all of that. So the question, I guess, would be, do you want to move forward with this project? If you don't, which is a decision you could make, then we're under no obligation to award the contract. If you want to do it, to the extent we want to build upon this, like bringing in a futurist, we have the flexibility in our current system to do it.
Yeah.
If you guys aren't ready to make a decision on whether to move forward, you could gather what information you want. What I would say though is that I would be somewhat concerned about if we were to go out for another RFP, getting responses. We only got 2 out of the 9 that participated. There are a finite number of groups that have the expertise in order to do this work, and they're all super busy between the recent House bills that had to do with workforce housing that's requiring a lot of studies, basically an audit of Goal 10 and workforce housing legislation. It's not going to get any better. And I guess my concern would be if we don't get into contract with someone and we were to go back out in like 2 months, I don't know what we would get if anything. I guess that's my concern.
Is a 2-week delay going to be a problem? Giving us a chance to look at what the proposals?
No, I don't think so. I just, I- and so I just wanted to make sure that we're following a process that we've followed with all of our other, big contracting we've gone out for is all. So for instance, with the stormwater master plan that was close to 350,000, there weren't proposal reviews, right? Because you assign a review committee and you review them and you assess points and somebody comes out on top.
I see this one a
Um,
little bit different, just in the fact that we have no expertise in that area.
Right, which is
We have
why,
a little bit of expertise in looking at what city might look like in 50 years.
sure, and that's why we brought you the scope to review, which also typically isn't done. I don't have an issue with you seeing the proposals. It's public, they're public documents. It's just a matter of what is it going to change or what is it going to do any different than making a decision tonight,
Councilor
I guess.
Polling? Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. I think that we should head in this direction with Eco Northwest. We're really primed in a spot right now where we need some sort of long-term visioning, especially with the growth that we're bound to have or are restricted to have at this point, right? Because we don't have that vision out there. I think that, with the scoring and everything else, I think Eco Northwest is the direction for us. Councilor Miller?
I'm in agreement with Councilor Polling. For me, I don't think that we should be involved in reviewing the RFPs before they're awarded. After is fine. We were already contributed to the actual specifications that went into the RFP, correct?
Correct.
So if there's only 2 that were submitted and we had a review committee that reviewed them to see if it met that criteria, then that is what it is, in my opinion. And we move forward and we can look at the RFP after it's awarded, but I don't know that it's proper for us to be involved in the evaluation of an RFP response unless we're part of the committee.
Councilor Grice?
Just to clarify, in the motion, it does not say not to exceed. Is that something that we should include?
I did notice that and I recommend you include not to exceed.
Okay.
That's how the contract's written.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm just curious if Counselor Lisowski has any input.
Counselor? Brandon, are you there?
Wake up.
Yeah, this is Counselor Lisowski.
You have any comments on proposal?
Based on the the information that's been provided, I would rather be a little bit I guess it would be proactive in assuring that we're going in the right direction with this. It is a lot of funds that we would be dedicating. I think it is a good concept for us to map our future and understand what our challenges and gaps are. But I still feel as though the RFP process needs to go through the proper process. And I still think that there's some clarification that needs to be made on what our goal is in executing a 50-year plan.
I have a couple clarifying questions, Counselor Lisowski. I'm just curious, what part of this process hasn't followed the normal RFP process, in your opinion?
I think that just based on Lori's response of what our process is and continuing with with how we approach the RFPs, if there's a specific, I don't have the specific to it at the moment, but I'm leaning on Lori's position of continuing the process for RFPs of this size, and not, I don't want to say cutting corners, but making deliberate changes that would take us out of the process that we've gone and done in the past.
So I'm hearing you say there's no need to review the proposals by council. Continue on, make a motion.
Correct.
hearing you?
Yes, we have a bid selection committee. We put our faith into the work that they're performing. And so that's where I would rather continue with that process rather than adding an additional layer of review.
So for me, the thing I'd like to see is I would like to see us move forward with this, but I definitely want to have that conversation with Eco Northwest about, and I think this is the futurist or what the future is going to look like, and as well as the canopy cover, so that there's an understanding kind of
Absolutely.
what we were looking for. And I think that's really, when I read Joel's thing, I think that's what he was really talking about, is when you're looking at that 50-year vision, you're not talking about what the future is going to look like. You're not really, you're doing a vision based on today's ideas and not what might be out there. So
Correct.
I think that we move forward. We definitely have those conversations with Eco Northwest. And I think that's a council conversation with them, if I understood that right.
Absolutely.
The concern I have is that nobody's ever done this before. And we don't know what it's going to look like. They don't know what it's going to look like. And we have some criteria. I understand that. You know, we've got certain things they're supposed to do. But my concern is that when this is all said and done, we've got something we're really proud of and it's really going to work. It's not just a bunch of jargon, and that every group has their jargon, and it needs to be something that lay people can understand, and that it's
Of course.
we have a concise version of it, so people don't have to wade through the whole thing to see what's on there.
Yeah.
And I just have some reservation about being the test case for a 50-year plan.
Well, let me clarify, because the components, the individual components, the economic opportunities analysis, the housing needs analysis, those have been done for years. We're not reinventing the wheel there. All of the individual components have previously been done in other places. What we're saying is expanding it out to a 50-year look.
Understand that, yeah.
Though that part of it hasn't been done by a city our size. There have been other cities that have established urban reserves, but again, not for a city of our size. So it's not that this hasn't been done. It's just the scale of it is different. The other thing too is, well, Peter, go ahead. You had something.
So the cities of Hillsborough, Beaverton, King City, Tigard, Wilsonville, the Stafford Triangle, as well as Happy Valley, those have areas that are adjacent to them that are urban reserves. Well, that was done through Metro in what was called the Core 4 process, where it was the 3 counties and Metro designating reserves. So, and again, that went to the Court of Appeals twice, and then finally was resolved either last year or 2 years ago. The years have just blended together.
The legislation.
Right, yeah, and Washington got the grand bargain where they got all their urban reserves confirmed by the legislature, and the other 2 counties didn't, and so the litigation went on. But so this has been done before, and having this, we would not be reinventing the wheel. We would know exactly what that process would look like because it's been litigated extensively. It's just, as Lori said, hasn't been done by a city our size.
And then the other thing, Councillor McHugh, to your point about making sure it's approachable or understandable for our citizens, one of the components, is the 50-year plan document. So what that's going to do is essentially, in one document, provide an overview of this entire project and process, and explain how, each component, what part of the process it informed, and how we used that information. So it'll be a nice finished product, in addition to the development code updates and amendments to the comp plan and all of those things that will happen. We will also have this plan document that will summarize everything and provide a really nice public-facing document so that people can really understand what the city has done here.
I think it's important we have a unanimous vote, so I'll vote for it. I am in support of it, by the way.
I think that the other thing that's great is that this is going to be the opportunity when we talk about that kind of branding or that style that we want. This is going to be the process that we design and develop that.
Yeah, it's gonna inform us in a much larger way.
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm gonna make a motion. I move that council authorize city manager Raines to enter into a contract with Eco Northwest in the amount of not to exceed $278,954 for the completion of the 50-year plan project.
Hearing a motion by Councilor Polling, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Council President Greisen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I waited because I knew I had someone online.
Oh, no math. That's what's going on.
Oh, it froze up the thing. All right. All right, next item, resolution number 22-01, Scappoose Hazard Mitigation Plan. Chief Davis.
Yes, Mayor, Council, good evening and Happy New Year. I'm here to present
New
on
Year.
the resolution 2201. On the phone, I also have Chris Carey, the Director of Emergency Management for Columbia County. In your packets, you guys should have the Columbia County's multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan, along with the City of Scappoose Annex and the promulgation letter from Columbia County. I just want to direct you to page 4 and 5. This is the phase 6 out of 6. So far, we've completed 1 through 5, and this was done way before my time. We started back in 2019 with our annex, gave that to Clackamas County. Columbia County. My apologies. And then Columbia County went to the state, and then the state went to FEMA for approval, and now it's back down to us for the final approval. We're the last one of 3 cities to approve this, the hazard mitigation plan. And it'll be good for 5 years once it's approved. Columbia County is going to go through their process of approval in February. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any on it.
Questions? Councilor Miller?
Is page 5, table 1 gonna be updated?
My understanding is we can update these as we apply for grants and as we need them. This was the initial annex. So there's a lot of things that have been changed since 2019. I'd have to ask Chris Carey if anything needs to be updated.
So, Chief, thank you very much for your time. Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you very much for having me this evening. First, let me say what a pleasure it's been just working with the city administration, with the city manager Alexander Raines and Chief Davis. I think they're setting the city up for success. Sir, to your point, so this plan is to reestablish a baseline with FEMA to just basically say, here's where we are. Here's where we are at this snapshot in time. This snapshot in time is from when all the public-facing components of this plan happened way back in 2019. Since then, it's been approved by local jurisdiction. It's been approved by the county, and like Chief Davis was saying, it's gone kind of up the chain and now back down the chain for formal approval. I was talking with Alexandra about would these details drive specific projects and drive things like that. The answer is not specifically. So if you were to have a project that was to be driven from the local hazard mitigation plan, you'd say, hey, we have a local hazard or natural hazard mitigation plan that has been approved by appropriate parties at the state and federal level, and we're going to execute this new plan or execute this new project with the most up-to-date information. So that would be things like the 2020 census data and other appropriate details. Does that answer your question, sir?
I think his question, so when we passed this in 2014-15, Tyler, and you can.
2 names in the chart that don't currently.
Could I clarify? This was the the steering committee at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
So it's okay, it's okay, it's not a conflict.
Yeah, I kind of realized that after I asked the
Yeah,
question, but
yeah,
thank you.
I was just gonna say in the 2014-15 one, it was actually a part of the resolution that was the steering committee, and I was gonna. All right. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move council approve resolution 2201, adopting the updated Columbia County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan for the city of Scappoose.
Hearing a motion by Councilor McHugh, do I have a second?
I'll second, and with a thank you to all those that have participated in this extensive document.
Seconded by Council President Greisen. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the work.
Thank
you. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, annual goal updates, goals 5 through 7. Substituting for Alexandra Rains, Dave Sukow.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
So if it works for you, we can run through these the same way as we did at the last meeting. I'll just name it off, and then if there's any questions, give me a holler and the nod to move on, or we'll try to get through them as quickly as we can. So we're starting with goal 5, addressing aging infrastructure. 5A, capacity upgrade wastewater treatment and collections, phase 1.
Continue on.
5B, update the stormwater master plan. 5C, update water, wastewater, and transportation SDCs and fees.
Be sure to speak closer to the microphone.
I can hear myself, so
It's hard for them.
no, I mean, I can hear it off the speakers.
All right,
All
continue.
right, moving on. 5D, IT upgrades.
No questions?
All right.
Move on to number 6.
Good. Goal 6, these are ongoing goals. 6A, coordination, one-stop meetings.
I had a question about that one. Did we include local, like the city of St. Helens in those one-stop meetings? Guard, counter,
Most
These?
of goal 6 is not me. I'm gonna have to defer to some other staff if they have answers for you on that.
No,
I don't recall that, yeah.
No, and these were really, we have, myself and Chris, we have, representatives from OMIC, PCC, Ed Freeman, the large landowner on the east side of the airport, occasionally will attend. Paul Vogel with
CCET, Columbia County Economic Team.
yeah, I think it changed a little, but anyway, and so it's more to do with really with business in Scappoose as opposed to anything joint with St. Helens.
Other questions on that? See a lot of you reading.
Continue on.
All right. 6B, promote and support small local businesses.
6C.
Can I add something? I mean, one of the ways we did was when we offer small business grants during COVID,
Yeah, we did.
just giving you more props than you gave yourself credit for. Thank you.
Move on.
6C.
6C, yep. Promote and support countywide and local tourism.
Questions?
No.
All right.
6D, continue communication outreach, focus on additional transparency and use of social media.
I was gonna save this for later, but I'd just like to add, whoever's doing the social media side of things and
Mhm.
adding all the content out there has been doing a phenomenal job. It
Go,
is-
Isaac.
Isaac.
It has been phenomenal. I've seen so much out there and I really appreciate it. So
Actually, I
You
came into the office last week after the flame was lifted, and I knew Isaac had doing it, and I saw him, and I
Need a
told him.
front load on that one. Whoa,
Yeah.
be mad.
I just told him that it was really good, and I actually suggested, with his skill set that he's doing, it's time to expand our social media outreach, whether it's a Twitter page or
People tweet.
something like that.
If I may, Isaac, do you want to mention what you told me about the engagements via Facebook?
Yeah, sure. So typically our Facebook page sees between 100 and 200 views about a week.
Oh,
Unless that's an error, it's not. Let me send him a message here.
Oops.
we just really started talking about it.
Yeah, right. Like I was doing a good job before that.
Okay, so what I wanted to mention, or hope that Isaac would share with you is, so typically, Facebook posts get a certain number of engagements, right? The analytics. Isaac, feel free to jump in whenever you're ready. I was trying to fill in the gaps here.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm on a weird connection, but so basically our typical page view for our Facebook page a week is about 700 or 800, and the Peace Candle series had about 60,000 people connect with it in some manner. So that was something in the realm of like a 3,000% increase. So
Sure.
quite
That's-
surprising.
Good job, Isaac.
Thank you.
Taking it down was definitely noticeable.
Yeah.
All right, 6E, support the senior center.
I'd like to just mention, the senior center really does appreciate the work you could do on the road there. That's a big deal. Unfortunately, it never lasts very long, as you know, and particularly in cold weather, just sort of, I don't know what the deal is with cold weather, but in rain, it just kind of, but those potholes, they're all back. And you told me that would happen, so.
Winter's hard time on the road, for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's, some kind of solution we can encourage them to work toward. That road is just almost impossible to keep any kind of it's going. So,
Portion of it's on the horizon for an overlay.
Yeah.
Which we'll be talking about next month.
thanks, Dave.
All right, let's move forward.
Sounds good. 6F, keeping Scappoose one of the safest communities in Oregon, and then continue community outreach by police department. Moving
Right.
on, 6G, maintain emergency response preparedness and update the emergency operations plan.
Check, check, and check.
Speaking of which, we just approved tonight. All right, let's move forward.
6H, provide school resource officer.
I just,
6I, traffic enforcement plan. 6J, maintain sufficient staffing levels. 6K, continue Citizens Academy. Good.
anyone?
All right, switching to develop a park and rec system within a 10-minute walk from all neighborhoods. 6L, continue Friends of Scappoose Parks. Which is a program that's been on hold for about a year since the step down. So hopefully someday at some point, somebody will want to rekindle that organization.
Or public art, I think we've done that.
Let me know we're ready to go to goal 7.
Move on forward.
All right, goal 7, long-term goals. Develop a vibrant and diverse local economy, which would be 7A, create a marketing and branding program. Sounds like it was underway. 7B, coordinate with the county to explore alternate route to east side of airport. I don't know that that's to the airport as much as it is getting around town to avoid congestion is more of goal.
So that's a prospect that's been looked at for a lot of years and so,
And it's still on the horizon. At the last ACT meeting, it was the project that was described for the county. That's where they're kind of putting their eggs in that basket on our behalf. So that helps get it some traction moving forward.
here,
It's obviously a long-term goal, but it is still
expensive.
the vision. So. Let's see, enhance community livability, goal C, explore possibility of a community center.
I would say that one's kind of ties in with our 50-year plan a little bit if we're really
It does.
put that in.
Correct, and they'll look at land needs for things like this, for public land needs as well.
That springs a question that I have too about the 50-year plan. So much of what we do is contingent on what the school district does.
Hmm.
And is there some coordination to get that so they're on the same page we are?
Yeah, so definitely we would, the consultants would work with the school district to understand what their land needs are as well. So that in that 50-year look of land supply, we're accounting for their needs as well.
And they'll have hopefully some buy-in to it. They'll provide what their needs are.
That would be the hope. That's correct.
Well, yeah, they need a new middle school so we can have our community center.
That's a huge,
Just an observation.
yeah, it's make a lot of difference.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
All right, develop a park and rec system within 10 minutes, which we touched on a little bit in goal 6. 7D, develop funding strategy for parks. 7E, explore development of the 14-acre park east of the airport. 7F, Veterans Park Chief Concomly Bridge feasibility study. 7G, develop Vista property. 7H, begin development of Chapman Landing.
All these are, we need to update the master plan and future work.
I was just gonna touch on that here. So, 7J, develop city facility master plan. Yeah, and it sounds like, and if you have interest in it, we could do a work session to talk about parks in the next month. Next presentation is on streets, and then we could switch gears if that's something of interest to you. We could talk to Alex and
I think parks, I think,
get together on that.
and I think we definitely need to update the Parks Master Plan because it guides the future and funding and so, yeah, we need to have a good conversation on parks.
Well, there's been several things done in the current master plan since its inception, and so, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to step back, reevaluate, see where things went,
Check off the list and then.
yeah,
Yeah.
where we want to go next, so.
But it can just be an update too, because I know that we updated the plan before and I remember I had to pull it out of the file for everyone. Institutional knowledge.
Yeah, it definitely needs an update, and it was put together by an intern, and he did a great job, but it would be good to have a second look, especially in some of the costs for the improvements, I don't think was
Costs have changed dramatically.
quite accurate, so yeah, it would be time for that.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you. All right, next item. Review city manager evaluation criteria and process timeline. Ashley Driscoll, welcome back.
Evening, Council. Thanks for having me. Please let me know if you're not able to hear me correctly.
Can you
So
move the microphone just a little closer? I'm only doing that for the video and all that.
let me know if I'm still too low. So last time I was here, we were discussing the city manager's selection and then negotiating the contract with city manager Rains. And one of the provisions of that contract is that we discussed having a evaluation process at the beginning of her tenure to review the year that she spent as their interim city manager, to discuss with Alex things that she does really well, the city's vision for the city manager going forward, and to provide any constructive criticism. So we were supposed to do this within the first couple months of Alex's tenure. So that's why I'm back here today. At the end of tonight, I would like a vote on approving the criteria that we're going to use to evaluate Alex, and also the process timeline. So when I took a look at how the city of Scappoose typically does your city manager evaluations, your annual evaluations, it's a fine process. What you typically do is you have one meeting with the city manager. Each one of the members of the city council fills out a form. The city manager fills out a form, and you turn them in. And that is essentially the end of the process. I'm sure there's some discussion about a merit increase. But my takeaway from some of our conversations during the negotiation process was that this might be a little bit of a different evaluation process, where you want to have a little bit more discussion with city manager Rains about, reviewing the last year and what the vision that you have going forward. So I've provided some options in terms of how the city council can go about this evaluation. And again, the two pieces of feedback that I would like us to discuss is criteria. If the current criteria that we've been using in the past is what we want to use in this evaluation process. And then what sort of process do we want to use? Do we want to use the same process that we've been using in the past, or do we want to have some tweaks for this particular evaluation? I would also like to point out, in the city manager contract, we did say that we would do an evaluation annually in June of each year. That is coming up, within the next 6 months. And that is the evaluation that you're going to be also discussing any sort of merit increase. So this one, again, is just to get the tenure started off right, not necessarily evaluating for any sort of merit increase. So I put down three different options. Again, we can go with one of these options. We can modify any piece of this. Really, this is an opportunity for the city council to set up a criteria and a process that aligns with your vision when we negotiated the contract. So the three options that I have are, the first one is just keep your process the same as it always has been. There's nothing particularly wrong with that process. From my perspective, it just does not provide an opportunity for the council to read the self-evaluation from Alex ahead of time individually fill out your own evaluations, and then have a discussion as a council without the city manager present about, having a little bit more of a unified message and vision for city manager reigns. From my experience, and I think from, anybody can relate to this, when you have, 7 supervisors, you oftentimes get conflicting opinions about the job that you're doing or the vision for the future. And that can be difficult as an employee. So if you have an opportunity to meet and get a little bit more of a unified vision and unified message, it's often more effective than receiving 7 evaluations. One rates you a 1 in one category, and somebody else rates you with a 5. It's difficult to know what to do with that information. So some of the other suggestions, I'm calling this the 2-meeting suggestion, is that we have our meeting here tonight. We review the process and criteria. You vote on that. And then the city manager fills out her own self-evaluation. She provides it either directly to you guys or she provides it to me. Each one of the city councilors then fills out your own evaluation of Alex, and you provide that to me. I compile it into one document. So averaging out some of the scores, compiling all the comments into one document, and then I provide that back to the council. The council then has an opportunity to meet in an executive session and take a look at that document and make sure that that document reflects the message that you would like to provide to Alex. And you can look at it for things such as, are we providing diametrically opposed direction to Alex on, certain aspects? Can we come to a middle ground? Can we modify this so it actually provides a consistent message and direction? So an opportunity to discuss that before you meet directly with the city manager. The second half of that executive session would be with the city manager. To be honest, I typically do this in 2 separate meetings, but in order to keep moving this process forward, I'm proposing 1 executive session that has 2 separate parts to it. And so you would have your meeting in executive session to review the results of the evaluations from council. You would make any modifications as necessary. The second half would be inviting Alex into that executive session and having a discussion with her regarding the results. So the pros on that one, again, why it is my recommendation is that every city councilor's message gets through. So every comment that you guys makes it onto the final evaluation. However, you have a chance to both see what Alex puts down on her responses first, have a chance to review the other counselors' comments, and have an opportunity to discuss it before it gets presented as the evaluation to her. The cons are a little bit of a slower process, and that second meeting can take some time depending on the council because you are discussing trying to come to a unified message and vision for Alex. The other option, and this is the one that I actually typically do with my city councils, is you divide it up into a couple of more meetings. You agree on the process and criteria. The first meeting is the council going through the evaluation on its own. So not every counselor fills out their own evaluation. You come to an executive session and you go through the criteria and you come to a consensus on each one of them. And then, I would put that together for the city manager. You'd come back for another meeting and you would present that one document to the city manager. The con on that is that it does take time to go through that process, and that if you do have counselors that really do disagree on certain aspects, it's difficult to come to that consensus. And not every comment or not every perspective is going to make it through to the final document. So that is the con on that approach. So the reason why I'm recommending the second one is that it seems like it's the best middle ground position. The process isn't too drawn out, but I think it's a little bit more of a thoughtful process. It gives an opportunity to reach consensus and to provide unified direction. However, if you're unable to reach that consensus, everybody's thoughts still make it through the final document. Again, these are just 3 ideas. There are, many different ways to do this, especially in evaluation process like you have here, where it's not your traditional annual evaluation. From my perspective, the purpose of this evaluation is to start Alex's tenure off on the right foot. So those are my ideas. I'm going to toss it back to you guys to see if there are changes that you would like to make.
I'm gonna say thank you for these options. It's having this for many years and always did the same basic thing. It's refreshing to see something that's, because you nailed it on the head on the one that we do is you get 7 different reviews, and how does the city manager really know what it is? I mean, either one of B or C, I think gives a unified voice. And I think that it is an interim one. I think B, I think for us right now would be good, because it also give us a chance to talk about where going and see it. But I appreciate this because I think we've asked past city management groups, not what we currently have, on options, and we could never get anything. So this is really refreshing.
Yes, I haven't been in the game as long as you have, and I felt like every time we were giving an evaluation, it was just kind of this lackadaisical protocol, and it didn't seem very helpful. And then one counselor would say one thing, and then somebody would say another. I personally feel like the way that this council functions, that option B is the better choice, only because I think it is important that voices are heard, and that coming to a consensus in regards to this matter probably would take more than an evening or never. So I personally would go for option B.
Okay with B or C. But
I felt that
I would
B would,
prefer B.
Yeah, I also agree with B. I think that that's the best process for everybody to be heard. And, you know, if there is, you know, somebody who feels otherwise, they can at least, you know, vocalize what they're feeling, and that leads to a lot of direction anyway.
I just want to clarify with B, the city manager would see the individual comments.
So there's many different ways that we can do this. How I had pictured it is that I would take the evaluation form, I would average out the numbers, and then I would include everybody's comment for especially the draft that I bring back to council. I wouldn't necessarily say who made what comment, but all the comments would make it on there.
So I'm okay with B or C. I just, B has a remnant of A, which is confusion. So if I put myself in the city manager's shoes about what's the clear message, how am I doing here, I think that B still kind of could create confusion if there's not a unified message under each one of those things. So that'd be my concern with B.
Mm-hmm.
Still think there's a potential for that to happen, but I'm fine with B or C.
I mean, I think we have to be honest with ourselves. It wasn't a unanimous vote on this council to have her as our city manager. So I think for us to come to a unanimous vote on feedback for her, pretty impossible.
Brandon, do you have any thoughts?
I agree that option B or option 2 is the best that is being presented, and I would support that.
So here's a question. Can we do B for this initial one and then kind of transition into C for future ones?
Definitely.
Because I always was told, well, you've approved, here's the criteria that you've set forth. You can only review based on that criteria. Okay. But I like the fact that you've taken that individual review on that criteria and said, no, this is a council. So maybe right now, this first one, we do this, but we transition to C in the future.
So that's fine. I mean, you'll have an opportunity to make that decision pretty soon here in June. But yes, and you know, there's always tweaks to be made. Like some councils actually do away with the numeric criteria because of some of the confusion that Councilor Miller was saying, is that you get a 1 and a 5, you get a 2.5. Like what necessarily do you do with that? So yes, we can definitely transfer to that in the future if that makes sense for the council. And this process is better than the ones you've had in the past.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, Tyler, before we would just fill out this packet and be like, here.
There was actually,
Some people didn't write any comments. They just went through and circled it the day of. We're sitting there. It was like a very haphazard process.
I think one time we actually, 8 years ago, we did collect. I actually averaged them out. That was actually the best one we did, but then it just went back to. So I love the fact that we're getting direction on, hey, set forth from the beginning how it's going to be.
I'm fine with B or C. I literally sat in another organization's meetings where they just in public session, they just talk about each of the reviews and in front of
We
everybody.
literally one at a time would just talk to the city manager and tell him what, I gave you a 3 because it was really bizarre.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with B or C. I just try to put myself in the person that's being evaluated shoes and trying to have as clear as message so that they can, I mean, if you look at the intent of what evaluations are for, they're to help the person be better in their position. So if I take that into consideration, I want to be able, as a manager or whatever, I would want to be able to give, use an example, my employee the best, clearest message to help them succeed and meet what my expectations are. So when I said C, I was coming from that place.
I'd just like to say that I've done a lot of these evaluations, being a school administrator, and I found that when you have this 5 categories, which I think is probably the best way to do it in this case, but if we go into this and we start off that every question, every area evaluation, they start at 3. And then you move the dial one way or the other based upon what your opinion. The only reason I'm saying that is that it's kind of hard to know what, how to fill one of these out sometimes. And when that was explained to me one time, and it just makes sense to me. So whatever that's worth.
Well, one last question, then I'm going to talk a little bit more logistics. So if everybody's had an opportunity to review the criteria, is the criteria still what you want to move forward with? I actually didn't have any comments on it, but now's your opportunity to make any tweak to the criteria.
The criteria is pretty standard.
Yeah.
And the one that is always the question is always the it's not in here. I was thinking like, relations with the employees and whatnot.
Hmm.
Maybe it's
Intergovernmental communication,
There's community and city council relations.
council relations, community relations. Oh, because we don't know on the day-to-day how they interact with staff.
Yeah.
I
the
understand.
most difficult part of what we're doing here is assume whether or not those day-to-day interactions are, I'll be blunt, appropriate or not.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, and sometimes you don't hear that up here. So, but there's really no way to that unless it pops up, via an email or text from somebody. But yeah, no, I'm comfortable with that part. I was never comfortable with the 7 distinct things. I like the bringing it all together.
Is there a category on there for a summary statement for the person doing the evaluation?
I don't
No,
think we could, now's the time to add it if that's something that we want to add.
I found that for myself being very helpful to use.
Mr. Mayor, in regards to your question, I could see that maybe being appropriate on the self-evaluation, have them critique themselves on their interdepartmental relationships.
That's actually probably very,
Mm-hmm.
if you could add a question like that for self-evaluation regarding,
Councilor Miller, could you say that again?
Just having the city manager basically critique themselves on their relationships with their subordinates.
and I'm in favor of Councilor McHugh's suggestion to have a summary or general comment.
yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so starting or keeping on, because this will be the final one. I want to make sure they have language right. Just looking at how the other questions are answered or asked, how are your relationships with your subordinate employees? Would that be sufficient?
How would you summarize your relationships with your subordinates? In regards to Councilor McHugh's question, I think you're referring to the self-evaluation. Is that what number 8 is, or maybe that just needs to be reworded a little bit?
I think it's for us to give a general.
Got it, sorry.
That was for us to give a general summary, right? For us to
Yeah,
put,
for
yeah,
us,
for us.
yeah,
Okay.
Understood.
Would that be like a closing comments or a general overview?
Yeah.
I just think you put, just general comments, or just comments, you know, it doesn't have to be specific. And it's optional.
I don't, this is just a climate that we have here is that our staff works as a team. So the language of like a subordinate doesn't really sit well with me. I don't know if it's like employees managed or
Reporting employees?
reporting employees or huh?
Direct reports.
Direct reports, department heads, yeah. Direct report, yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
Although I want to know how they're interacting with somebody.
But just employees, with employees?
Yeah, great, thanks.
the reason I
City employees.
get the subordinates term. The reason I specifically said that was because, you know, there's volunteers and things like that too. But yeah, I agree. It is a little awkward.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's good.
All right, anything else?
And then if we could just permanently change, it's on page 294 in our packet, but it's at the start. It says performance and development appraisal. It talks about the purpose of it. We could just permanently change he to there. I don't know who will in the future be working here or how they'll identify, but it says there.
Okay.
We'll never have to change it.
I would agree with that, Councilor Greisen, is that we should have gender neutral pronouns associated to all documents that the city produces.
So are there any more comments about criteria? Okay.
Sounds like it, no.
So let's talk a little bit about timeline. So by the way, Alex was in favor of option 2 as well. And I did talk to her a little bit about this evaluation. She is out sick this week, and so she did not know if she could meet the January 10th deadline. So if she's not able to meet the January 10th deadline, I asked her what she thought she would be able to do, and she suggested another week. If it is in fact another week, what I would suggest is that we bump our meeting until February and have that executive session in February rather than on the 18th.
We already have a meeting on the 18th. Would we be changing that meeting?
Well, we just wouldn't have
Executive.
session. We'd have other business. So we wouldn't do the review. We'd do the review February,
Okay, so we would still have the work session, but then we would have just,
regular meeting.
agenda would be just the work session.
Oh,
We'd still have a meeting that
it'd
night.
still be a meeting. There'd probably be other business that the staff will have for us that night.
And the reason for that is if she gets me it on the 17th, I'm just not going to be able to turn it around quick enough. Or yeah, we wouldn't be able to turn around. If she get the self-evaluation to you guys, then you guys fill out your evaluations. It just pushes the timeline too far back.
Should we push it back anyway?
I have a hunch this girl will get it done.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be a.
I mean, there's no burning fire under this. I do believe that there was a push to, because we are a little bit behind in starting to get it done, but I think if it goes to February, that's totally fine.
I'm fine either way.
Okay. So I guess the only vote I would need is just to approve the amended criteria and option B with a potential amended timeline.
I actually have a clarifying question on timing of her evaluation and in the future, us deciding about a pay increase or not, and then also looking at our budget and when we do our budget. Would it make sense if we just always did a January review for her so that if we did decide to change her salary, that there was ample time to get it into the budget for that year when we do budget meetings? May?
Definitely. It would require an amendment to her employment agreement because her employment agreement specifically says
June.
the evaluations are in June. You can have it any time during the year because, city managers receive both the COLAs and potentially merit increases based on their evaluations. So you could do the evaluation, have the merit increase effective whatever date.
You reach out to
Alex, about that?
Alex about that.
And would that mean that this year, this is it? And that we would not be reevaluating in another 4 months? We would just wait until next June? Or what does that mean to her, salary,
Yeah, I have to go back and look exactly of the language of the contract, but we could change it. And, that would be up to you guys and Alex in terms of, what the contract says now is that you conduct an evaluation annually in June, and that based on the results of that evaluation, you would consider a merit increase. So that's all that language says. So some city managers I have their contract is annual based on their actual contract. So they're evaluated in December and they get raises in December or in February. So, you guys can make that decision. It's a little awkward if you do the evaluation in January and have it, either retro to the prior June or I guess it makes more sense to be effective the coming June.
There's a lot that can happen between January and June. So I kind of like the idea that maybe it should be possibly around May and leave it the way it is until get through the June process this year and then decide what we want to do. Want to change?
That's probably a good idea. Start.
So if it's just a budget issue, though, we could consider that part in January as a contingency that our June review ends up being what we expect it to be for.
I don't remember
Increase,
when we
right?
ever did them in the past and how
Usually
that
done about
affected,
June.
and how that affected the budget. It just kind of seems like
So-
if you're gonna give someone a pay increase, we would kind of know a little bit before we.
I think that Jill in the budget typically anticipated positive increase. So the merit increase, like whatever it would be, like 5% plus whatever the COLA is, and built that into the budget. So if we didn't give it to her, then in the past, someone, him or her, that they would, that part of the budget would just go unused and fall into, unused funds. So that was my understanding of how it was done in the past.
I don't think it's been a problem.
So we're keeping it.
Yeah,
Okay.
at least do this first June one, then we'll reevaluate.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. So I think what we're looking for is a motion to proceed with option B with the amendments.
Yeah, I would just say proceed with option B with the amended criteria
And the potential amended
timeline.
timeline. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Pauling.
I recommend that we proceed with option B in our evaluation as amended.
So a potential amendment to the
Amended.
timeline and then the criteria as amended.
Criteria as amended.
Hearing a motion to use option B that was presented to us with the amended criteria and potential amended timeline moved by Councilor Pauling. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McHugh. Would have been Councilor Lasowski, except the digital thing is a little slow.
Okay.
Right.
With the broadband, or I don't know.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, announcements, calendar check. Our next council meeting will be actually Tuesday, January 18th, with a work session with the Budget Committee at 6 PM, City Council meeting at 7 PM. Planning Commission meeting on the 13th at 7 PM. Economic Development Committee meeting at noon on the 20th, Parks and Rec that evening on the 6th. The city offices will be closed on January 17th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Well, do you have anything?
I do not have any updates for you.
Mr. Shukow. Thank you. Chief Davis, you have anything?
I don't have anything.
All right. Councilor Miller.
Happy New Year.
Councilor Polling.
All right, well, I already said my thing earlier. And again, Isaac, I really appreciate all the work you've done with social media side. I will continue to share anything you guys put out there as well. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great to get this communication out. So keep up the good work, all of you.
Happy New Year to everyone. 2021 was quite eventful here for us at the city. I wanted to thank the PUD and the Public Works Department for putting up the holiday banners. They look really nice. I thought it was a great idea that we chose something a little less, quote, holiday-ish and something more seasonal, especially with the snow that's been around. Leave those babies up for another 2 months. I understand that as Americans that we have the right to free speech, but we just have such great schools here that my kids know how to read and sound out words. So I just encourage those citizens that choose to fly certain flags or post certain banners with profanity on them that they know that small children are able to read those words. All I have.
Thank you for that last comment. I think that's very important. First of all, Dave and Public Works did a great job of getting the roads all good for us to use. I'm sure all is involved with that, but I had no problem getting around. Appreciate your good work. Newsletter looks great. I really thought it was just a lot of good information in there. Appreciate all the work that goes into that. I would like to have I get asked what kind of police coverage do we have 24/7? And it's probably not something we want to put in our minutes or anything, but if you could, if somebody could, Sean, Davis, or somebody could send the council an email to know what are we looking at? What kind of coverage do we have in the city of Capros as far as the 24/7 police coverage? And the other question is, when someone's not on duty, how are those calls handled? Maybe everybody knows this but me, but that's my question.
I can send something out.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Chief.
And I guess the last comment is, I just think our council should do everything we can to think big. And I just think we want to make this city the best city it can be. I know everybody agrees with that, but sometimes we've got to think a little bit out of the box and move forward in the most positive way possible and think big. Maybe there are things we could do that, we're not even considering right now. But anyway, I know nobody will argue with that. I just want to make it a general point. We should do that though for our community.
Thank you. Councilor Osowski.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to second Councilor McHugh's comment in regards to Public Works efforts in trying to help maintain the roads. And as we had this snowstorm, I think also just being aware of the DSAW is always a potential concern for our community and our waterways. So I know that staff is keeping an eye on all that they can and really appreciate all of their efforts. With that, I say thank you.
Thank you. A short hour and 50-minute monologue I'm about to begin here tonight. I'll go over a few things. Actually, I just wanted to point out in our department reports, because everything we get is public record, planning development updates. This one kind of excites me. December 15th, kind of funny, I called the people on December 16th because I had heard that they were going to do it. And I said, when are you turning into that application? He's like, I did it yesterday. Staff received an application for the city's first food cart pod permit. The application proposes an 11-cart food cart pod and a tap house dining hall to be located on the property just west of the totem pole at the north end of North Portland Road, Old Portland Road. The existing brick house on the lot would be removed prior to construction of the food cart pod. Staff is currently, this excites me because this is kind of like when you think of the pod vision with a tap house and, you know, with, when Varsity closed, we kind of toward one place where people can go eat and have, and this is exactly, I think, what people are envisioning, what we're envisioning when we move this forward. So it's pretty exciting to see the first one down the pike. Yeah, and a great location.
At least
And
it's
it would be-
healthy options for high schoolers to walk to during
Uh,
lunch.
Yeah. You know, food carts are, I'd prefer them over fast food joints. So I'm excited to see that. Hope everyone has a happy new year. Looking forward to meeting our candidates for chief of police.
Yes.
Looking forward to our upcoming goal setting session and reviewing our city manager. Should be a great 2022. That's two, not TOO. And it's not a sequel. We're trying to. But yes, yes. So anyways, everyone have a wonderful night and I will see you all later. Thank you very much for coming out, Ashley and Peter. And thank you for everything you do, Dave, Lori,
Isaac, Yule.
Yul, Susan. Without Susan, I don't know if I'd even know what day it was.
Sean.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for everything you do. And also don't forget Isaac, but I already praised Isaac a little bit today. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.